Off we go. Whew. So today I'm very happy to have Roger as our guest. He's VP of Marketing and Sales Development at #Paid from Toronto, Canada. The company was founded in 2013. But before we go into details about marketing and sales and #Paid, I want to get to know you a little bit better. So Roger, where are you living?
I'm out of Toronto, Ontario. I live in Canada.
Beautiful. And what are you doing outside of work? Because I mean, I'm based in Germany. We imagine all Canadians being outdoorsy and going like fishing and hunting and all this stuff. So what are you doing there?
That's a good question. So no hunting, no fishing for me. But we did take over the winter. We did do a lot of hiking with the kids and with my wife. We did do a lot of that stuff. I did some snowboarding. Yeah, but now the weather's getting better now. So running, running will occupy some of my time now outdoors.
Very cool. How big is your family, if I may ask?
I have a son and a daughter.
How old? Roughly?
Ben is 4 and Megan is 2.
Wow, so you have 3 babies, a startup and 2 kids. That's like that's very cool. And what are you doing at #Paid?
Yeah, so I I lead the marketing function, and at our company, marketing includes the sales development function as well. So I get to work with those wonderful people, and that's my job. My job is to get people very, very excited about influencer marketing. And when they're in the market to make a decision, hopefully they remember us and we're a part of sort of that final decision. We're in the mix with some other brands.
Mm-hmm. Great. And what is your company doing, #Paid?
Yeah, so we're an influencer marketing platform. And so our job fundamentally is to partner brands with creators. And our vision, one of the things that we want to do in the future, one of the things that we're working towards is for #Paid to be the best place on earth for creators to do what they love to do, which is create. And right now our mission is to increase the amount of collaborations that they have with brands, because that gets them paid and it funds them and it gives them the resources, cash to live life and to continue doing what they do. So our vision is to support creators. That's our main objective. That's our North Star. And we do that right now by allowing them to collaborate with brands.
So you're basically a two-sided marketplace, to put it simple. On the one side, the creators, so all these Facebook, Instagram, whatnot influencers, and on the other side, all these brands that want to have the reach of those influencers. Did I sum it up correctly?
100%. That was perfect. Yep.
Awesome. So looking at not the influencer side, but the company side that you also have to attract as a client. What is how does your ideal client look like, if you can, or ideal clients if you have more than one ideal customer profile?
Yeah, we have like many companies, we segment our market in. We're mature enough now to segment it into 2 customer types: our enterprise customers and our SMB customers. Our SMB customers are mostly, they adopt a model of delivering their products that's direct. And so for folks who aren't familiar, there's a couple ways you can sell your products. You can do it through retail, wholesale, or you can do it directly to consumers. And so, and that would be e-commerce, for example. People come to your website, they click a button and it gets delivered to your house, which has been very, very popular, of course, throughout COVID. And so e-commerce has experienced a big boom. And so our SMB side has taken up a large portion of our focus because it is booming. So on the SMB side, e-commerce brands take up, they tend to be, our target customer tends to sell directly to their consumers. And on the enterprise side, we work with consumer brands. So any brand that is selling goods to consumers.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me like, if you want and can share a rough size of like your ideal customer, like on enterprise, what kind of size of company are you talking about? Are these the Adidas and Nike of the world, or is it like what kind of revenue do they have? And also on the SME side, what is your ideal customer? Because I ask because it helps later on to understand why you do the marketing you do.
Yeah. So on the enterprise side, the companies tend to be very, very large. So you're looking at companies like H&M, Nestle, Unilever, Philips. So big companies. For car brands, it's Volvo, it's Toyota. So bigger brands. On the direct-to-consumer side, those are brands like Big Blanket, Everyman Jack, Meissen, Native deodorant. So those tend to be the size, and roughly in terms of revenue is a bit tough to determine on on the SMB side, but there are other markers that would sort of identify our customers on that end. But it's not really related to revenue all the time. There's not always a correlation.
Okay, cool. And I just said when you said, yeah, there are like these small SMB companies selling online now. I started to buy stuff on Instagram now. Funny enough, I never thought I would do that ever, but and also through influencers. So I'm a triathlete. So I saw Jan Frodeno, who is like the world champion of triathlon, and long distance at least, partnering with a brand for goggles, swimming goggles. Yeah. And I looked at it and I liked it somehow, and they have a compelling reason to buy them. So I ordered it. And it's, I think, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do also as a small company, leveraging this kind of influencer market there for you if you have a good product.
Absolutely, 100%. And this is fundamentally what we believe, that that people look up to their creators. There are people of influence that people look up to, that they look to for cues and signals of what's in style or what works or what has worked. And so for you, it's an athlete. For me, it might be a musician, or it might be another athlete in a different sport. And so you look at what they're using and what they're doing, and in a sense, psychologically, we without really thinking, we associate those successful people with these products. And so we make the leap somehow that product will be good, and that it will be good for us. And so there is a tremendous amount of power in influencer marketing. And it extends beyond just consumer products. We see this in B2B very often. Influence has been around for a very, very, very long time. This is not new. And so it works. We really believe in it.
I have a segue question, just because you said B2B, and I never thought about it, but does this also, do you also support this for B2B environments at all? Like, did anyone ever try it out with you?
We do have some B2B clients. So we have one customer, for example, who it's a scheduling app, and they manage schedules. Their app manages schedules for part-time workers around the world. And so their target market is very, very large, where it makes a lot of sense to use influencers, where they can pick a couple influencers or creators with audiences that have part-time gigs or shift work. And so that works really, really well for them. And they've been with us. They're one of our sort of longest customers. They've been with us for a long time. So we work with B2B brands if their target customer tends to be a little bit bigger. If it's very nuanced, like SaaS is not possible. Although I'm a big believer in influencer marketing and SaaS, we don't. It's not something that we would readily provide.
Okay. And can you give me an idea of the size of #paid? Be it number of customers, revenue, number of employees, whatever you want to pick.
Yeah, we're at about 60 employees right now, I think. Just above that, I think in April, we have about, 20 hires slotted for this month.
So 20 for this month.
Yeah, this quarter. And so we'll end the quarter in June at about 80, 85. So we're going to take a big leap. Yeah, it's going to be a big quarter for us, and we'll probably end the year at close to 100. So things are going pretty well. And the toughest job is finding really, really, really good people at the rate that we need to find them.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean,
to be
that's
very
almost
difficult.
doubling. Yeah, I can imagine it on a very little scale because we are doing our first 5 full-time hires. Up to now, we worked with working students, and now we hire 5 people. And in terms of full-time, that's like doubling from like 4, 5 to 10.
Yeah.
So that's already painful, like doubling from 60 to 120. I don't know if it gets easier if you have someone responsible for it, but I imagine it's still a lot of pain and a lot of things you have to do right.
Yeah, it is.
I
It
mean,
is
at
not
least
easy. Yeah.
you probably have a playbook for hiring people. So I hope it gets better. Give me some hope.
Yeah, you know, some role, and I'll be honest, some roles I'm more confident in hiring for, and others it's my first time, and so I'm learning, and I disclose that with whoever I'm interviewing, and I let them know, hey, this is my first time doing this, so and I apologize in advance if there's questions that are janky or not maybe well thought out or don't hit right, and so you improve the process as you go, but some roles are easier than others for sure.
I might, if you want to, I can send you later on a really cool video, and I'll put it into the show notes. Maybe you already know it from Job Smart, the Who method of hiring A players, which changed my mind completely on how to hire people. And it's a lot based also on reference checks and reference calls, where you get to know a person through their former bosses and coworkers. And it's really interesting.
Interesting.
So that was a segue, totally not related to sales and marketing, but you always have to hire good people. So do you have a magic
Absolutely.
formula there? Something that you said really you learned something that everybody else could pick?
For the SDR function, we've developed a pretty good system for hiring that works quite well. I took over my first time managing SDRs full time was here at #paid, and so I had to learn very quick. But I was unset. One of the things that I don't like about the SDR world is the general philosophy for management that you hire a lot and you fire the worst, and so you just end up you sort of over-index in people, and then you in that role, and then you sort of let them go, and you net out, and that's actually what you want to hire. So if you want to hire 5, you hire 10, then you let go everyone that sucks. That for me seems I was not satisfied with that philosophy, and it's very difficult to hire SDRs. It's not easy to hire really good ones that are going to be with you for a long time and also produce for that amount of time, because it breaks your heart every time one doesn't work out. And so one of the things that we started doing was letting people know when they do come in inbound, we let them know what the process is. And the process for us is you prospect our SDRs. So I make all of our existing SDRs part of the hiring process. And I tell whoever comes inbound, your job is to get our attention. And if you can get our attention, it's a very good proxy for whether or not you're going to be able to do the job and get our prospects' attention. And so that's sort of our encouragement for people who come inbound. Here's what you can do to make sure you get the interview. And so we get wonderful people prospecting us, and it's incredible how much easier the interviews get. Our conversion rate from stage to stage has increased dramatically. I think we've hired 60 or 70% of people who get to the final presentation because they're high quality, they're good. And so the first step is prospecting us. Once every SDR gives the okay and says, yeah, this person like good copywriting, or they got my attention, they differentiated themselves, they were creative, etc., whatever it is, then we book a 30-minute meeting with the SDRs and me, and then we interview them as a team. And the SDR, we hire high caliber people, so I trust them with the hiring process as well. And of course, we HR knows about this, so we make sure that this is confidential and private, of course. But our SDRs are part of that process, and they know what it takes. They know how difficult the role is. They know what it takes to be successful at #paid, and so they're able to ask really, really good questions and drive that interview. And then we take and then we chat as a group, and we decide whether to move them forward or not as a team. And then there's a final presentation that we ask them to just run through a live scenario with us, a live prospecting scenario with us, and then that's our hiring process. But it starts with prospecting us one, and then an interview with our SDRs.
So if I want to become an SDR at your company, I raise my hand, then you say, yeah, sure, it's nice, but you have to prospect us, and then the process starts. Or how can I imagine this?
Yeah, that's how it is. the best SDRs are the ones who do that right away without us telling them. So we get a lot of resumes, and I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't looked through many of them. The majority of them I have not looked through because there has been enough people coming inbound to fill the roles that we needed. So I haven't had to go look at the inbound resumes. So my encouragement to people, and this goes for any role, not just for SDRs, but especially I think for SDRs, that if you can't just rely on the resume drop. It's not part of what you're going to be doing. If you rely on, if your cadence, if your outbound cadence is, well, I sent them an email and they didn't respond, then you're just going to have a really, really tough time in the role. You do need people who are going to go above and beyond, who understand that one email is not going to make the difference, or two or three even. It's going to take creativity. It's going to take different channels. It's going to take different times. It's going to take a strong proactive effort. And we look for that right away, especially for this role, not for every role, but especially for the SDR role.
Yeah, I get it. Reminded me of another podcast I had with Greg Alexander. He is in a totally different space. And he hired basically people who could sell consulting services. And what he said on top is, like, for seasoned, like it would be the AE position, probably someone who has the sales calls then, so not the ones who book the calls, but the ones who have the sales calls, to ask for references about former customers. And if they are really fast and saying, yeah, sure, I can give you boom, 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 then they're confident they did not only win enough clients, but they won clients that the company could help. And so they have happy clients. And if someone is like hesitant, and you also see it in the body language, then okay, maybe not so good. Yeah. And then you do 1 or 2 or 3 calls with former clients, and you directly find out some interesting things that you might not find out by just talking to them, because usually those people can sell themselves, at least in a formal setting, if you're an AE.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. I 100% I agree with that. Yeah. And I'll say this as well, because one of the conflicts inside with this process is that it's aggressive, it can be cruel. And so if there's anybody listening who's thinking of adopting this, well, it takes, you need to care for the people who do prospect you. And so I do take the time, if someone goes out of their way to do something above and beyond, so more than just a text message through LinkedIn or an email, if somebody goes above and beyond to reach out to us, I always give them at least 15 minutes of my time to coach them on maybe why we're not moving them forward. Maybe it's copywriting, maybe it's grammar, maybe it was not understanding our product or doing enough research. I try to take some time to coach them so that they can sort of hit it out of the park the next time. So that's one of the ways that I resolve some of that conflict inside.
Yeah, it's good for your conscience, but it also builds up good karma. Somehow I believe in good karma. So if you do good, you get some back. And if you have the capacity to do something good, it's nice. I forgot the name, but I'm following one, or I'm connected to one guy on LinkedIn who basically replied to all his inbound cold calls, or not calls, messages, and gave those people feedback. Like for 1 month, it was, I don't know how many, like
Wow.
in the 2-3 digits. And I mean, he's a smart guy, so he created also a lot of buzz on social media for this. So it was clever. But I believe in what you're doing, and maybe you can also take this at least for your HR managers or whoever is doing it, and use what you're doing also in some other capacity.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you know what ends up happening is you vet something, when you do that, you learn something else about someone. It has happened before that we've said no to someone and they take our feedback, they learn, they grow, they come back and they prospect us again, which is resilience, and it shows us perseverance, and they move forward, and because they learn, and so you also give people an opportunity to demonstrate whether or not they're coachable, and whether or not they have a growth mindset and the ability to learn and adapt, and so it's very exciting from that perspective. It's very exciting to see.
Yeah, great. I will adopt it for sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. But now going into a totally different direction, we had a little pre-interview and talked about like the pressure on marketing to generate leads, and which usually leads to gating almost everything that is kind of valuable. Gating means, for all the people who are not so familiar, you people who want to see the content have to give their contact details, email address, telephone number, whatnot, so that they get access to this content. And you have a specific like take on that, and can you tell us what you think about that tactic?
And I'll start by saying this. I think every business is unique, and so every business will require its own approach, of course. And so I don't mean to say that this is that this should be applied by everyone, or that sort of this is the only way or one way to do it. But here's here's something that I've done. So I'll speak about #paid and what I've done in my personal philosophy, and that is that if you work really hard to develop a piece of content, and then you put it behind a gate, you limit the eyeballs that get on it, and you limit the spread and the reach of that piece of content. And so it's one of my beliefs that those pieces, those items should be ungated, meaning you shouldn't ask for an email or for a form up front in order to access it. You can do a lot of good by giving that and giving that content the opportunity to go viral, and quote unquote, I say viral, it's not, it's not going to get 1 million views on YouTube, but or anything like that. But you viral in the context of a B2B business, of course, right? Where it gets exchanged and shared, and it goes from hand to hand and from marketer to marketer, who tends to be our customer. It goes, and you give it that opportunity. When you put something behind a gate, you don't. Now, in order to drive traffic to that page, you need to pay to drive traffic to that page. You need to email people to go to that page, which it's just less valuable for people. And so we've adopted the philosophy of, we default to ungating everything, giving everything away for free.
Now I play the devil's advocate here. So and now I say, okay, that's great. So you have a lot of people getting really great content and using whatever tips you give, but I never get in touch with them. I mean, how do I get those leads now?
Yeah. And it's a very good argument, and of course, that's the most glaring reason not to do it is, well, where are my leads? And so you need to have a plan. You need to plan how you're going to, of course, capture those leads eventually. It's wonderful to have that stuff spread, but when they're on the page, when they're on the content, how are you planning? You have to think about a couple things. One is, how are you planning to convert them on that visit? So can you convert them into a newsletter subscriber, for example? So that's one option. The second option is, when they leave the page, what are you doing afterwards? So are you retargeting them with another piece of content? Are you retargeting them with a lower funnel offer? What's your plan for after that? And so you need to, that's how you think about lead gen in the future. But there's nothing to say that someone won't come back eventually when they're in the market for your tool. If they don't convert then and there, maybe let me phrase it a different way. The conversion rate on content that I've seen historically is below 2%. Okay, so 98% of people who are going to give you the email are not going to buy anyways. So yes, so basically you're giving up leads who are not going to close anyways, because few of them convert on content. A lot of them just want the asset so that they can see what's behind it and so that they can learn. They're not going to buy right away. So why gate it in the first place anyways? We get way more leads, and this is hypothetical because it's not possible to A/B test. Or it's not hypothetical. It's my assumption. It's my guess that we get just as many leads now by ungating than we would if we gated.
So people directly get in touch and say, hey, I would like to get to know your product or whatever and whatnot. And do you analyze and ask later, how do you, I mean, it's always hard to ask because it's usually multiple touch points, but do you have a sense on why those people get in touch with you? Yeah,
and so that's a great question, because we do have pretty robust tracking on the back end. So if you come to our site and you don't fill out a form, we use a tool that sort of tracks your engagement across the website, across your life cycle. So all of those touch points are tracked, even if you don't fill out the form. So we know if you came from an Instagram ad or from a Facebook ad or from a Twitter ad or from a display ad, we know that you came and you didn't convert. So but the next time you come, it'll have that original touch point plus that touch point. So we track every touch point that you had with us, and we can sort of go look at the source and the last touch, etc. So we're able to get that data anyways. So you need to have a plan for tracking, of course, so you know where people came from. So yes, we do know where they're coming from and what specific content they're engaging with.
Yeah. Two things interesting. First one is your 2%. It's also something that I usually say, and I forgot which study I saw, but it's always like of your potential clients that could buy your product, 1 to 3% are ready to purchase right now, and the rest, for whatever reason, is just not ready at this point of time. So being a hard selling one, like maybe you get this 1 to 3%, but the other ones say, well, I never want to get in touch with this guy again or this company. They were spamming me all the time. And if I ever consider doing something, it's for sure not this company. So that's paying into this whole notion of you have to take care of your whole market and not burn through all those leads. Because I mean, you would get the fast return, and yes, you get some revenue and whatnot, but then you will pay for it later.
Absolutely. And the reality is when people are ready to make a decision, they have a couple companies in mind, and they'll probably go to sites like G2 Crowd or Trust Radius, and they will go and they will find comparisons of different vendors. They will even Google this tool versus this tool, or they'll sort of a very low funnel, high intent search. They'll put influencer marketing platforms, for example, or PLM platforms, whatever it is that they're searching for. And it's important. So we optimize for those directories, right? So we're number one on G2 Crowd or number two, and I can't remember if we're number one or number two now, we go back and forth. But so when they are searching, we come up. And so you do need to have a plan to capture that intent. So we have paid search. We want to capture all of that low funnel intent. What we want, what I'm optimizing for is I just want you to remember us when you are ready to buy. I don't need your lead right now, but I need you to remember me when you're ready to buy. And that's when all of the leads come back, because eventually they are going to buy. And that's the lead that I want. And so it's short-sighted to want all of the leads up front. And if you're a marketing leader listening to this, you need to, in a job interview, with your leaders, with your management, you need to set expectations and say, hey, this is my approach, or if you're adopting this philosophy, this is how we're going to do it. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but once it hits, you're going to start seeing this roll. And this is exactly what we're seeing. We've grown beyond our expectations. In the first quarter of this year, we grew over 50%. And my spend in paid programs is minimal. It's just people now who've heard of us in the market. We dominate share of voice on social, because we give our content away for free, and people quote us and they tag us and they share it. And so they're all coming back now. And our cost of acquisition is going lower and lower and lower and lower. It costs us less and less to acquire a lead. It costs us less and less to acquire an opportunity. And we don't gate anything except for our main form, which is our product, to get inside our product. But I don't know if it's going to work for everyone. Again, this is our case, and so sharing
but
this.
I'm asking you. So that's absolutely fine if you tell us what's working for you in your opinion.
It's a touchy subject. I've had people who absolutely fundamentally disagree with me. So, so I want to preface it might not be right for everybody, but it certainly has worked for us.
I can tell you, with all those marketing and sales leaders that I'm interviewing, I cannot remember anyone contradicting what you're saying. Like, and you talked about G2. I had Mike Weyer, the CRO of G2, as a guest.
Yeah.
And we can link the podcast to the show notes. And he said basically something similar. They have a little bit different tactic. So strategy, what they do is they put out a lot of content for free, but they have one main big content piece where they take out all these small content pieces that are valuable, and this is for free. But if you want the big content piece, that's where you have to give your contact data then. So, I mean, there's not one way to Rome. You can take different routes, but the philosophy of, I would say the good karma philosophy is, I think, the change of the decade of the 20s now, where you're not hitting, but giving.
Totally, absolutely. And that's a great approach. And G2, they do some great stuff over at G2. So wonderful examples. And a lot of people will do that. They will, the big piece, they'll gate that. And it's wonderful. here's one thing that's happened to us. And I can't take credit for it because it's serendipitous to a certain extent. I mean, you optimize for it, but you can't like, oh, this is what's gonna happen if I do this. But we released a creator rates report. And so we took all of our data, how much we paid our creators, and we made that totally public. We broke it down by industry, by vertical. We broke it down by follower count, by asset type. So it was a very in-depth document. And of course, the pushback was, well, we should gate this. This is so high value. And my argument is always, well, it's so high value that it'll get shared. And so, I really, really wanted to make this thing free, and we did, and it was incredible. We put it on Twitter. I think we got 800 likes on the tweet. It got shared by some of the biggest publications in marketing. It got retweeted for us. And so here's what ends up happening now, which is way more powerful than the leads we would have got, is that the people who are retweeting us are influencers in our space. They're the thought leaders in our space. And so now this is invaluable. This would cost hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s to create this association in people's brains that now this powerful thought leader, this powerful publication has retweeted our content. And so now all of a sudden, what happens is they see our logo and they see this thought leader, and all of a sudden their authority is imputed on us. So it's sort of attributed to us by default, just because they see both logos together. This is the power of influencer marketing. You assume something about someone based on who they're associated with. And so by making that piece of content free, we associated ourselves at no cost to us. It costs us, I don't know, $1,500 to produce the piece, $2,000 at most. It costs us that amount to be associated with some of the biggest names in e-commerce and direct-to-consumer and marketing in general. And so it costs us $1,500 or $2,000. And the amount of traffic and revenue it drove and pipeline, it was incredible. And so we couldn't have done that if we had gated the content. And that association now is way more powerful, because that's going to carry on to the end of the year. Right? When people are thinking of influencer marketing, oh, that thought leader tweeted something from a brand. Who was that brand again? It's us. And now we're in the mix. And all I need is to give our sales team an at-bat. Just get at-bat and let them take a swing. We have incredible close rates. We have an incredible sales leader. Just give them an at-bat. That's my job. Get them an at-bat. And so I believe we did that. So yeah.
Congrats.
Thoughts for you.
And if you haven't thought about it already, you should do a yearly report now with this stuff.
I should, yeah, I should. And it's really exciting because at #paid, from sales to CEO to COO to across the org, there is no pushback around gating or ungating. We're all bought into the process.
Do you have anything gated? Do you have anything gated at
No, nothing. Just if you want to get into the product. So if you actually want to get in, of course, you have to create an account. So we can email you, send you updates, notifications, of course. That's the only thing. Everything else is free.
Awesome.
And so if we have an event and we need to send emails to register, of course, if it's a live event in the future, we ask for an email there. But after the event, we ungate it and we make it free for everybody.
Wow. And
it's not like we're not tracking pipeline or revenue. We're contributing. So if you look at our revenue and our sources, we know exactly what channels are driving it, and marketing is driving 70, 80, 90% certain months. So it's not like we're coasting and we're letting sales drive the revenue. We're the primary sources for revenue, and so that's what we track. That's how, whether I keep my job or not is based on whether or not marketing contributes that revenue. So so we're being very rigorous with sort of our expectations.
And I must say, it's a little bit harder for European companies now because of GDPR regulations. So you're not allowed to track people anymore. The whole cookie thing and all that, not working. Yeah. So what you are able to do is not possible at that extent anymore. But still, you can adapt part of your disciplines and do what is possible at least. So that is really, really interesting.
But here's one thing you can do, just to provide value for some of the people that are listening. Here's one thing that you do. If you know who your customers are, and you know who your customers look up to, why not pay that person to write an article for you and then get that person to share it on their handle, right? Whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on Twitter. We do that with one of our publications, and we just our job is to get founders, to get marketers to write for us, and we pay them. Like, I'm okay. I would rather pay for content than pay for ads or whatever else, because now that person becomes not only a content producer for me, they become an influencer and they become a distribution channel. And so you don't need to track people there. You just need to get the content and get them to agree to share it on their handle. And it's their piece. They wrote it. It's their perspective, you know. And so they're happy to do that. So that's one thing that people can do, and it's actually very low cost. It works out to be very, very effective and cost effective, I mean.
And I mean, we do that with our podcast, and you also have a podcast, so maybe you don't even pay people, just invite them on your podcast, ask them all the questions that you want to answer to, and once you have the content, you give it to them, and they share it also, exactly same logic, for free.
Totally.
Do you also, like, who's your, like, I can tell you what we are doing. We are inviting people who are representing our target group for a future product of ours. On the one hand, you learn a lot about your future customer. On the other hand, where you have a personal connection to someone who was on your podcast, and you create content with the voice of the customer because you're interviewing them. So that was our main objective to do it. Why did you start a podcast?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons. The first one, I think, is to understand the space. I was new to the space. I wanted to meet with people. And so it forced me, before every interview, I would get very nervous. I still get very nervous before every interview. It's one of the things that sort of, it just drains all my energy, because it's just nerve-wracking for me. You're talking to extremely intelligent people who are leagues beyond my level of intellect, and it's very difficult. So it takes a lot of preparation. I knew that through that preparation and through that planning for the episode, that I would grow and that I would learn. So that one reason. The second reason was authority. And so once you have a podcast on the space, for some reason, you're a little bit more authoritative. And you have content to share, you can repurpose it, et cetera, et cetera. You know how great podcasts are. And then third, it's influencer marketing. It's a form of that, right? So your guests on your podcast, essentially, people don't understand that they were invited there and that they gladly, you know, did it. They see a name, they see a podcast, and they infer authority, right? I infer authority based on who's on your podcast. And so we wanted to get really good guests, because we wanted our logo to be associated with people, notable people in the space. So that was the third reason for doing the podcast. And I would say an even more powerful thing than creating your own podcast, and this is to my earlier point, is if you pay someone, an authority, to run a podcast for you, and you put your logo on it. So that's more of the payment for content, because then I'm less motivated to share this podcast than I would be if it was my podcast. So, for example, one of the things that so Shopify does this really, really, really well, right? Resilient Retail, for example, they brought on, she had her own podcast. She had her own podcast before, Playing for Keeps, and they hired her to run Resilient Retail, which is a Shopify podcast, but she runs it. But she's a distribution channel. She's an authority. She's the mayor of direct to consumer on Twitter. And so now they not only acquired a content producer, but they also acquired a distribution channel, because she has thousands of followers. And so this is more of the idea with the publication is, can I bring in someone to actually author it, so that they're more incentivized and motivated to share it than they would be if they were just a guest. But both work wonderfully well. There's both. I encourage people to do both.
That's amazing. I mean, I never thought about that one, but that is super powerful. And I mean, I didn't think about it because we don't have money to buy such big brands to do it. So it's more like the guerrilla approach to, okay, I have no money, but I have an idea. Let's get started. But for bigger companies, I just saw an article in one of the big economic journals of Germany, where a stock of a shoe brand skyrocketed because they hired an influencer. And that's exactly what you basically said. I mean, you talked about hiring someone for a podcast, and I didn't even read the article, so I don't know what she will be doing, something with marketing probably. But you see this power of thinking about, well, someone has access and you buy a channel, as you said, you basically buy the whole channel and also know-how. So that is a super interesting idea.
Yeah. And this is the creator economy now, right? People are it's been there's fewer gates, right? It used to be that TV, producers were the gatekeepers, right? They decided who and who did not have influence, right? And generally those are your musicians, your actors, your politicians, your celebrities. Those were the people who had access to the masses. That's not the case anymore. It's been spread out. Creators now aren't just content producers, but they're distribution channels. And that applies to B2C, but it also applies to B2B. Your thought leaders aren't just content producers for you. They can also be distribution channels. And it's very, very powerful. And I don't see as many people in B2B taking advantage of that.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit creative, but it's always possible. It's always possible. Yeah. And usually there are ways, even if you don't have a lot of resources to do it, and it's not that time consuming. You just have to, like with everything, you have to test it out. And sometimes it works for you, sometimes not. But it's definitely better than just paying for ads. Yeah, that's a bad way to get rid of your money. You still have to do it, of course, in the whole approach. I mean, every piece has its fair share, but only relying on something paid. Or some other customers we have is before they joined us, we call them farmers. Yeah, just waiting until they come. that's also it's a nice and relaxed way, but it's not a good way to grow fast. We talked a little bit in our pre-interview about also corporations using LinkedIn, and I can tell you my take, and I would be interested in what you are thinking. So corporates often use their LinkedIn accounts, their corporate LinkedIn accounts, to post something, and what I see is they are really not. They are just. I didn't see anyone being successful there. My guess is that people like to connect to people, which is also why influencer marketing is working. People connect to people and not to just brands. I mean, that was possible with the TV era where you can build up a Nike or whatever. But my guess is that now maybe there's a new way of doing things. What do you think about that?
I think you said it well, Sammy. I think you said it well. People want to hear from people. I think that's people want to hear from people. I think that's probably the biggest point there. And so when we share sometimes we allow the author of our piece to be the one to, we don't share from our brand handle. We allow them to create. So for every piece that we create a thread on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So people don't actually have to go read the article if they don't want to. They get the full article. So not only do we ungate it, but we actually don't even force people to go to the website. They can get the summary on Twitter. We create the whole thread of the article, and then we link to it at the end. And same thing on LinkedIn. We give them pretty much, here's everything you're going to learn and all of the takeaways. But if you want the whole article, the link is in the comments. So that's one approach. But there are times when we don't do that, where we allow the writer, depending on who it is, we allow them to actually post a thread on our behalf. And those do very, very, very well. Both do well, but when it comes from people, it does even better.
So do you also use the LinkedIn accounts of your employees to push content out, or enable them to at least select content that they want to use? If you have some people like SDRs or whatever, I think they're potentially connected, or people look at their profiles.
Yeah, our customer tends to be mostly on Twitter. So for us, Twitter is a big channel.
Or Twitter, yeah.
Yeah, Twitter is a big channel for us. And yeah, and this is going back to sort of full circle to the beginning of our conversation with sales development. One of the things that we encourage our folks to do is be active on Twitter. So engaging with our thought leaders so that they build their own brand, their own personal profile, among other things that we do to equip them. One of the things is encourage them to be active on Twitter and to be posting. And so we have a Twitter Slack channel, and when someone posts a tweet, whether it's content, whatever it is, they post it there, and then the whole company jumps on, and we try to like it to create some buzz and momentum for that post so that we can get this thing, sort of the content driven up. And so we're all sort of playing together to work on social, and it's why we just started measuring this. And I used to laugh at this metric, but sure enough, here I am measuring it. But share of voice, we put all of our competitors and we track sort of how we're doing on social, and we're smashing it. And part of it is because our company and our employees, SDRs, the CS folks, they're all going and they're liking and they're sharing and they're retweeting, and it causes things to bubble up. And same thing on LinkedIn. We do post it on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, any channel where your customers are. I'm talking about LinkedIn because that's where we are focused on, but Twitter or Facebook or whatnot, Instagram, it depends on where your customers are. It's always the same principle. And what I was really like, what I don't quite understand yet is why, I mean, you started with it, but I think you can go much deeper in leveraging the network of your employees, you know, if they are willing to do it. You don't have to push them, but the ones who are willing and volunteering. And I mean, you're a fast growing company, but compared to big companies, you're still small. Imagine like companies with tens of thousands of employees, or even departments that are focused on one industry, still thousands of people. They have like employees sharing something that is really interesting and giving their own twist on whatever is there. And they post on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, whatnot, you know, what kind of buzz you can create. And I don't know, at least if there's a really good tool out there to do it, but even if there's no tool, or is a tool there, I don't see the mindset yet of taking this step further, of leveraging people for people, because people connect to people somehow.
Yeah. Here's one guess. I'll take a stab at maybe why, and I don't want to sort of generalize, but here's one thing that I've noticed. When it comes to posting, a lot of employees post the link to the article, for example. They post back to the link, and if something comes up my feed, rarely, if ever, am I ever clicking to go read someone's blog post. It's just, and you see the likes, like one like or something. Yeah. Sometimes a person likes it themselves. And so what we do with our team is we encourage them to actually copyright. So you got to write copy related to the post and then link to it later in the comments. That's or whatever great. Else. So one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lack of good copywriters across the organization, which sort of gives people less confidence to post and to do that. And so, for example, on my SDR team, instead of in our SDR weekly meeting going over numbers or SDR tactics, which they can learn on their own very easily, and the metrics are very clear, we'll do it quickly. One of the things that we do is we go through books together. And we pick a book and we do a chapter a week, the whole team, and we beat it up and we look for analogies and how it crosses over into the SDR function. But one of the first books that we did, that we saw a huge lift in the team's capacity to copyright, is How to Write Better. How to Write Better Copy by Steve Harrison. Vicky Ross, who's one of the best copywriters on the planet, she recommended it, and we adopted it as a team. And I'm telling you, I don't even look at my team's copy because it's so good. They do a really, really good job. You set the framework for a narrative or for a story for the company, but they do such a good job of eliminating big words and fat words and long sentences, and we cover and then we read books on psychology, and here's one that we're doing as a team right now. We're doing cash advertising. We're almost done, and so they start putting all of this together, and they get really good copy, and so they can post better. And so if you want your employees to post really engaging content, you have to invest in them so that they're good copywriters and so that they're good marketers. And now we sell to marketers, so there's a double benefit of going through these books, because we also understand our target market. But they're also becoming better marketers, and they know how to start a tweet, right? They know what words to use to hook people in. They know what ideas will stick. And so that's one of my guesses is that people don't post better, that companies don't have better posts, or employees don't post more because they don't have confidence around copywriting, and they don't have confidence around the expertise in maybe their space. And so one of the things that we do is we tackle both on the team.
That's a really good one. And I will put the link into the show notes of the book that you mentioned. I will for sure buy it for my team. I'm a strong believer in that.
Great book.
And we do the same. We do it either with, we sometimes hear a good podcast and we share it, and then we say, okay, everybody should listen to it, and then we talk about it. But how do you do it in practice? You have a book, and once a week you have, how much time do you take? Like hands-on, if you want to do it, how do you do it?
Yeah, so we have an hour a week with the SDR team. We have stand-ups on Mondays and Thursdays. We do Tuesday a weekly meeting with the team, and then I do one-on-ones with a couple folks. Our Tuesday meeting is 45 minutes book, 50 minutes Trello board. And so that's where we log all of our tests. So we go through, what are we testing right now? And then everybody puts their before and after, and then we log things like successful or not. So we take 15 minutes to do that, and then 45 minutes in the book. And so you can see, here's one, but we'll do a page, people will underline and highlight, and then here's a chapter. What stood out, right? So what stood out to you? What's something that you can apply to the SDR role, and what's something that you learned about our customers? And so those are 3 questions that if you answer, and if you have 5 people on the team and you answer those 3 questions, those are the 45 minutes, and there's a tremendous amount of growth. Even if we've read some books that were duds, they weren't very good, but even then we still grew an enormous amount because maybe we didn't agree with the argument that the book was making, but we got a full, complete thought, and we were critical about it. And so the process is where the learning happened. It wasn't even just the book. It was the process of beating up the ideas where the team's growth happened, or where the growth happened. So that's how we do it. So we have 45 minutes. We go through the book. What stood out? How does it apply to the SDR role? And what does it tell us about our customers generally?
Do you note that down somewhere so that future employees can read up?
Sorry?
Do you write that down, all this, like the outcome, so to say?
We don't, unfortunately. What we do though is sometimes we get stuff to test. So be like, oh, this is interesting. That would be good to test. Let's prove it. And so we log it in the Trello board. We have a backlog of tests that we want to run. So we log it as a backlog test, and then we move it into testing whenever we're ready to test it.
One question now. We are almost done with our time. Do we have a hard stop, or do we have like 5 to 10 minutes more?
No, I'm good. Yeah, we're good.
Good, because then I would love to know more about your testing strategy. Tell me more about, you said you have a backlog of tests.
Yeah.
What is a test? What is a backlog of tests? Do you have a structure, framework for that? How does it look like?
Yeah, so I think I have one post on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to go to my LinkedIn, I actually put a picture of it. But
we can put it into the show notes. If you send it to me later, I link it into the show notes.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. There's 4 columns. The first column is things to test. And so this is where if you read something somewhere, our team is part of a group called SDR Nation, which we should link this in the show notes. It's a very valuable community for SDRs. And so they will get ideas there, things that other people are testing, whether it's a call script or an outbound methodology, a cadence structure. They'll log that in things to test with their name on it. So we know who dropped that in there. And then our second column is testing. And so once something is actively being tested, it gets moved from backlog or things to test into the testing column. And then we do it every 2 weeks, because we normally want 2-3 weeks for every test. Every 2-3 weeks, we look at the board, or we look at what's being tested, and we go through each card, and we're saying, what was your before? So if it's a subject line, we'll say, what was your open rate before? What's your open rate now? And if it's, well, my open rate dropped, so, well, okay, this is not successful. And then when we have, so then we move into not successful or successful. That's our 3rd and 4th columns. So number 1 is backlog, things to test. Number 2 is testing. Number 3 is your successful column, and your 4th is not successful. And if something is inconclusive, we'll either move it back to things to test so someone else can test it, or we'll just delete it because it was a waste of time. So those are the 4 columns. And so one of the key things in order to run a test is you need a before and you need an after. And so we just make sure that the team logs that in so we use Trello for it. You can use any tool you want, but we just make sure that they log in before and after.
That's super powerful and simple. I mean, everybody can adapt that.
Yeah, it's super easy. Absolutely. Yeah, it's anyone can do it. Anyone can
love it. Love it.
We have our developer friends, so thanks for that.
Very good. Let me have a look at my notes. If there's anything that we have to cover. No, I think we covered everything that I really wanted to cover. So we are coming to our 5 rapid fire questions to wrap everything up. What do you do to keep body and mind fit and sharp? Especially as, I mean, your role is like a high power stress role.
Good question. I need my alone time. So in the morning I get up and I read and pray. So that's the first thing I do. And then I run.
How long are you running?
Later towards the summer, once my body warms up, 10, 15K. Now I'm doing about 5, 6.
Cool. Favorite business book, if you have one?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Dale
I
Carnegie.
love it. Yeah, that's something we read recently in our team. It's like
Phenomenal.
never ending. People don't change, and this book is timeless. Put it into the show notes for everyone who doesn't know it. It's a must read for everyone. Favorite business leader you follow?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to mention Phil. He's our VP of operations. I learn a lot from him. We have such wonderful conversations. I don't always agree with him, but just wonderful conversations. I'll mention him. Or maybe recently Chamath has been really good. Chamath he's a VC. He's doing some cool stuff, so I've been following him.
At what company?
And then Web Smith, Social Capital, and Web Smith at 2 p.m.
And why?
Yeah, sorry, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Why Web Smith?
Oh, sorry. Web Smith is one of the things I love about Web Smith is he's a generalist. He's a strong believer and advocate for people being polymaths, which meaning people who are experts in various fields, and then bringing all of those things together and creating new connection points between fields of study. And so he's a big advocate for it. He's a wonderful marketer, historian, and he's always looking at things through the lens of history, and what that means for culture today, what that means for business today, what that means for movements and cultural shifts today. And I find him fascinating. He's a wonderful father. I think he's a wonderful leader. And so I follow him. I enjoy his stuff.
What you just said reminded me of the book I'm reading right now, Dune. I don't know if you know it. The books. It's several books. I think 5 books. Dune. It will also probably be as big as Game of Thrones, because it will be it will be a sequel, I think. But it's basically a science fiction saga, so to say, in the future at some point, where people can travel in space. But it's in fact a book about people, society, and politics and economy and all that. And it's really interesting. This guy was ahead of time, and many things that I read right now I can relate to at this point of time. Wow, he was really right, this guy. And it was written in this 80s, I think. So that's really cool, interesting.
Wow.
But I'm asking you the question. I shouldn't talk about myself here.
Can you share that with me if you don't mind after the show?
Yeah. I sent you the link to the
awesome.
book. It's a really good night read. Amazing. I read it every evening before falling asleep in my bed.
Love it.
It's really good. Who should be our next podcast guest and why?
I'll say, I'm gonna throw one a local friend. His name is Camille Rexton. He runs Agency 42, and he's sort of a contrarian, I'd say, a bit. Maybe he wouldn't agree with that. I don't know if he would agree with that. It's maybe how I view him, but he's got some wonderful perspectives on ABM. I think account-based marketing. He sort of cuts through a lot of the noise and fluff, and kind of paints a decent picture of what ABM actually is, and especially in the context of marketing. So I've been enjoying a lot of his recent posts. He's also doing this interesting project where he maps out the org structure of companies, specifically marketing departments. So he did it for Gong, he did it for Drift, and I think it's gonna be a wonderful resource in the future for marketers, so they get an idea of how different companies are structured. So Camille Rexton at
awesome.
Agency 42.
Cool. Can you get me in touch with him, or ask him if he wants to be? Awesome.
I will.
And now you can directly address our audience, anything that they can help you with.
Yes. Hiring, recruiting. It is, if you are an SDR, if you are a head of social, if you are a growth marketer, if you are a content writer, if you are a designer and you're looking for work, we are hiring for so many roles. We're looking for customer success people. We have the deals keep coming in, and we need more CS people to sort of take care of our clients. And we're bringing in deals quicker than we can sort of ramp up our CS team. And so we are a desperate need, and we need some enterprise sales folks as well. So we'll be, I think, doubling that team this year as well. So if you're somebody and you want to join the team, please get in touch with me. I'd love that.
Do you have to be in Toronto, or where do you have to be situated to be able to join?
No, we just hired a new head of enterprise sales. He's out in New York, so we're hiring remote.
Awesome, that is good news. So anybody out there in the world, apply here, and you know how to apply because he told you how to do it. So don't just send a resume. Yeah.
Get to the front of the line. For sure.
Yeah. Where can people get in touch with you, Roger?
Yeah, I'm most active on Twitter. And I surprisingly respond to almost every DM, so direct message or on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So those are great places.
Okay.
And my handle is Roger Figs. So Roger,
yeah.
Figs.
We will put it into the show notes. Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to have you as our guest, Roger.
It was a pleasure being here. Thanks, Sammy.
Awesome.